In one sentence, what does your company do now?
Stack Overflow is the world's largest developer community with a suite of products that serve developers and technologists as well.
So the first question, we're going to start with the rapid fire round. The first one is, at what age do you want to retire?
60.
Okay. Work from home or work from office?
Both.
How long does it take you to get ready in the mornings?
15 minutes.
In one sentence, describe to me a problem that your company is facing.
Hiring people.
Your favorite SaaS or software tool?
Love Slack.
Most embarrassing moment of your life?
I feel like I've fallen in public many times.
Okay. Who's Peter Thiel?
Peter Thiel is a technology investor and billionaire.
The first movie that comes to your mind when I say the word ambition?
Avatar.
Your favorite app?
Spelling bee within the New York Times.
Best no-code tool you use?
I don't know.
How many hours of sleep can you survive on?
3.
Fill in the blank. An upcoming marketing trend is blank. No, we're going to pass that. The city in which the best kiss of your life happened?
New York.
Okay. Pick one, Mark Zuckerberg or Jack Dorsey?
Jack Dorsey.
When did you last cry and why?
I last cried at my sister's wedding when giving a toast.
Okay. The biggest mistake of your career?
I only think about going forward.
How do you relax?
Reading.
How many speakers at this conference can you name and name them?
1. My CEO.
What's his name?
Prashant Chandrasekhar.
Okay. How many cups of coffee do you drink per day?
1 to 2.
A habit of yours that you hate?
Yeah, I'm not on my phone too much.
The most valuable skill you've learned in life?
Writing.
And the last question is your favorite Netflix show?
I just watched Heartstoppers. It was great.
Okay. All right. So the bigger questions. On your LinkedIn, you explained that you're a full stack marketer. Could you talk a bit more about that?
Sure. So within at Stack Overflow, I manage 5 marketing teams: the brand team, the communications team, the demand generation team, the product marketing team, and the content team. And so one day I can be working with the brand team, solving big challenges around how we frame or position the company. The next day, our ABM strategy for demand generation. And then a day after that, focused on pricing and packaging strategy with product marketing. So I like to think I'm pretty agile, sometimes an inch deep and a mile wide, but really defer to the expertise of my very smart colleagues and can have a conversation about any marketing topic, really.
So what's your one advice to someone who's managing an equally big marketing team? How do you manage your time? How do you allocate time you spend between different departments?
Well, I think my first piece of advice is always hire people who are smarter than you. Don't be afraid to hire people who are smarter than you, for sure, because you have to defer to the expertise of others. It's not possible to be an excellent brand marketing CMO and an excellent demand generation CMO. So that's 1. 2, with regard to managing time, people ask me all the time, I wake up early. So I manage a highly distributed team. Many folks are on the West Coast or in the middle of the country. And so I get a lot of my work done between 7 a.m. and 10 a.m. because I spend a lot of my day in meetings. That said, I save most of my day on Friday for work time. So I block off time to do work. People know that I don't really do meetings on Fridays, and you have to be highly protective of that time if you want to get things done.
Could you explain the term stack itself, as well as Substack, and finally Stack Overflow, for anyone who's confused about what all of these things mean?
Sure. Stack Overflow itself is a technical term, an error that developers experience. And that was the name of the community after a naming contest that was run in 2008 or 2009 when the site was launched. And it has nothing to do with the company Substack. It has nothing to do with the company Slack, which we are often confused with. It just, happens to be a pithy, successful name.
And how does it must be challenging making such a business model work for an online utility based largely upon the free sharing of advice and knowledge. Yet 2 years ago, your company raised 85 million in investment. How do you explain this magic?
I think it's actually not that challenging. We are very fortunate to have a massive community, to have 100 million people that visit our website every single month, making it one of the 200 most popular websites in the world. And so we often talk about this concept of community as a competitive moat. And so what we've been able to do is, in partnership with our community, launch products that they love, have a built-in customer base, built-in evangelists, and whether it's advertising, which we serve to our technical population and continues to grow despite everything, or Stack Overflow for Teams, effectively a private version of the public platform, our products feel very natural. And there's built-in demand given the massive reach that our public site has and has had since 2008.
So what are some lessons you've learned from marketing to developers, and why traditional marketing tactics don't work in this field?
Yeah, I worked at WPP for a number of years, often working with B2C companies. And when I started working at Stack Overflow, I had managed developers before, but I had not marketed to developers. And I effectively had to unlearn everything that I thought I knew about marketing. And so a very basic example is when we promote Stack Overflow for Teams, our private knowledge management and SaaS collaboration tool, of which developers are the primary buyer, we tested a whole bunch of banner ads. And what converted best was the thing that would be the least sexy to a marketer. Very few colors, certainly no motion graphics, no stock images, no cartoons, not even a proprietary font. So the more stripped down, the more straightforward, the higher it's likely to convert. And so when you speak to a developer, whether it's through a banner ad, through a video testimonial, or a white paper, you have to be as on the nose as possible. You have to speak clearly, and you really can't mislead them or be superlative or speak aspirationally. It's here's who we are, here's what we're trying to do, and here's how we'll help you in very real terms.
And what has your experience been in scaling marketing teams across a variety of industries?
Yeah, so at Stack Overflow, when I started at the company, there were about 6 people on the team. Today, that team is approaching 40, 45 people. It might be 50 by the end of the year. So I think that the challenge in marketing is that you always want to hire ahead of growth, but you want to do so responsibly. We've all seen, countless examples of companies that have pivoted to video, for example, built huge in-house media operations, only to have to let them go 6 months later. And so what we try to do is very, very clearly define the business case, the KPIs, and the goals for which we are bringing a team or an initiative on board, so that we're not in a position where we have to rein it in down the line. The other thing that I think we've aspired to do a good job around is ensuring that there's a lot of cross-functional partnership. So customer stories is a really great example of that. Our communications lead, our content lead, our product marketing lead all work very closely to ensure that we are using all of our resources, that there is a lot of cross-functional collaboration. And if someone leaves, which is happening in a market like this, where there is high demand for talent and a lot of transition, that no one person is irreplaceable, that everyone knows a little bit of what's going on, what everyone else is doing, and we can continue to move forward because we are so cross-functional.
And how would you relate this to building a brand? And how do you find is building a brand essential in today's market?
I think building a brand is absolutely essential. And I think that oftentimes what we see is when a company is obsessed with performance marketing, dollar in, dollar out, they struggle in a couple of ways. So one, if they ever hit a crisis, if the business misses some of their goals, if they have to do layoffs, there's a breach, a lack of investment in brand really hurts them in environments like that, because all they have is their customers, which they could be losing. They might not have a sophisticated PR or communications operation, and there are very few evangelists for them. So I think that's one challenge. The other is that if you're not investing in brand, there's always a ceiling. So if you're investing all of your money in performance marketing along the lines of SEO, SEM, or even ABM or fields, you're not going to be able to think expansively or aspirationally about where the brand could go. And that's true for companies who stick to one market, who don't continually expand their personas over time. And so I've been really fortunate to work at a company where not only our CFO, but our CEO understands that at least 10, 15 of our budget has to be invested in brand awareness, broadly speaking.
And how does one even measure the ROI of brand awareness? Like, what would be your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I talk about this all the time with other CMOs, and like, we do what we can, but we're never going to be able to get it to 100%. We're never going to be able to say with 100% conviction that this $100,000 campaign we ran did X, Y, and Z. And so like everyone else, of course, we launch brand tracking surveys. So we can say longitudinally, here's how we've moved the needle with a specific population of folks within our target market on X, Y, and Z. We, of course, track things like social media follows, media impressions, and other metrics. But at the end of the day, you can feel what's working and what's not. And so what I try to do, in addition to those sort of quantitative data points, is marry them with anecdotal feedback we're hearing from sales. And so one example is we launched this April Fool's Day prank where we created a sort of fake hardware, a copy and paste keyboard for Stack Overflow. And given the enthusiasm that we heard from people, it got the unboxing video got 500,000 views and sort of took over Twitter within the developer community that day. We made it real, and we sold out 10,000 units of that hardware within a day. And the salespeople were coming, beyond the enthusiasm we heard from our community and folks who were not necessarily paying for our products. We heard from our salespeople, look, my customers and my prospects are dying to get their hands on this. And so what we did is we set aside a certain number of units, and we used those as a catalyst for conversations with sales folks, driving our pipeline, accelerating our pipeline, driving our revenue forward. And that's just a small example of where, the brand spend was relatively minimal, but it did take up a lot of the team's time. And had we not done that, which some people scoffed at the time, we not only would have been leaving a lot of awareness on the table, but we would have been leaving real dollars on the table as well.
And so to pivot the line of questioning a little, you've written often about LGBTQ issues. And since it's also Pride Month right now, we wanted to ask what role you think tech has to play in the present and the future of the queer community.
Yeah, I think that the reason I took this job, so I was speaking at Outed Tech, a conference in the US about LGBTQ issues and the broader community, queer community in tech. And the reason I took this job is because I understand that 85% of the developer population is visiting Stack Overflow every month. Over half of developers are visiting Stack Overflow every single day. And so I believe that every single technology in the world, whether it's the phones in our pockets or the car who took me to this conference today, is being influenced by Stack Overflow. Developers and technologists who are building that technology are visiting our website. And if I, in my role as Chief Marketing Officer, in partnership with the leadership team, can make our site 1%, 2%, 3% more welcoming and inclusive, we can have a cascading effect on all technology. And so there are countless examples, like the car rideshare one that I just mentioned, where if we prioritize accessibility on our public platform and we get developers and technologists thinking about accessibility or have it top in mind, they will hopefully incorporate some of that in their app as well. And so within the queer community, I think that it's a conversation we need to continue to have. But the more stories we can tell on our platform, whether it's through a blog or behavior on the site, then we're doing good work. And it's important that every single tech company, doesn't just change their logo for Pride Month, but that they sort of, one, understand the roles their products can play in making our world more inclusive, and two, that their hiring practices and their employee benefits and policies are written for everyone.
And are you staying on for Amsterdam Pride at the end of this month?
I'm not. Unfortunately, I'm headed back to New York, where it's Pride in New York next week. Yeah.
Okay. So the last question is, what would you be doing if not this in your life?
It's a good question. I think Look, in between this job and my last job, I took about 6 weeks off. As you mentioned earlier on the podcast, I do continue to freelance for a number of magazines in my free time. And I said, what would it be like to have a sort of bohemian life as a writer, write in the park in Central Park during the day and wake up and go for a walk with my coffee. And I didn't like it. It wasn't for me. I prefer the sort of fast-paced, high intensity, sort of Monday through Friday sprint. And then that sort of bohemian life, reading, writing, relaxing is better for me on the weekends. And so maybe years down the line, I will retire and write a little more full time. But for now, I enjoy working with a big, highly collaborative team. And I love working for a company where we're reaching millions of people.